Maggie Creedon, and I'm covering the challenges of living with other people while being in college. One of the main experiences in college is having to live with either someone you know or a complete stranger. Some people walk away from this experience with a new best friend or can take another turn to where their roommate is their worst enemy. Regardless of the outcome, the majority of young adults go through having a roommate and or suitemates. Meredith Hamilton is a sophomore at Winthrop University and is currently my roommate since last semester. She knows firsthand the struggles of living with someone else. Freshman year was full of trials and tribulations when living with someone. She briefly gives us her story from first semester and everything that she has had to go through while living with someone else. Making the transition from fall semester to spring semester was completely different.
My first semester of my freshman year, I chose to live with a random roommate. We hadn't met before we went to school, and it turns out that we didn't end up having any common interests. Once she got to school, she became very homesick, and about a month into school, she transferred home because she couldn't handle being away. I was living by myself for a few weeks, and then a girl that I knew asked if she could move in with me, and I agreed. A few days after she moved in, problems started from sharing such a small space and adjusting to college life, while also our expectations of what a relationship with a roommate should be were completely different. Things resulted poorly, and the girls on my floor ended up shunning me to prove a point that I was in the wrong and they were taking her side. So basically, I lost all of my friends that I had met at school because of a girl that I thought was my friend. It ended up being extremely difficult living there throughout the rest of the semester, and I spent most of my time avoiding the floor. Maggie and her roommate at the time were also experiencing similar problems, so we decided that after the semester ended and after we came back from Christmas break that we'd both be moved out of our room and into one together.
It sounds like you had a year full of challenges and drama, but in the end came out with an awesome roommate. How are your living conditions this semester?
This semester, I still live with Maggie, and throughout the time that we've lived together, we learned to adjust to each other's needs and wants when living in such a small space. However, this semester we did move into a suite with two of our best friends, which took some adjusting but not much, because things that we normally would do, as in like shower late or get up later, affect other people because it's not just us living together anymore. But it wasn't that difficult. Mainly the most difficult thing living with them now is who's going to clean the bathroom or who's buying the next roll of toilet paper. I honestly wouldn't change anything because they're my best friends and we're all grown adults and we're all capable of changing things to make sure that everyone is content as to compared to just one person.
Sounds like you have a much better year in comparison to last year. What advice would you give to those who have had a bad roommate?
If someone is experiencing a bad roommate, my best advice would for them to try to work it out and make things as best as possible, because moving out and having to move into a different room is one of the most stressful experiences that I've had to go through, because whenever you move out, it's generally towards the end of when something's going on, like a lot of tests or maybe exams. That's when Maggie and I moved out. So my best advice would be to try to avoid that as much as possible and try to work things out by talking it out, finding some sort of solution or some way to fix things or to avoid it. But if things don't end up working themselves out, I would suggest trying to decide whether or not living together for the rest of your time is worth it, or deciding whether or not to move out. Because if it's somewhat manageable, then I would suggest staying to avoid all of the excess stress. But if it's completely unmanageable and there's no way of getting past it, then I would suggest on moving.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. As you can see, living with someone is always a challenge. You have to adapt to their ways of living and try to keep things at a constant compromise. If there is no compromise, there will most likely be tense situations. As long as both roommates are accommodating to one another, there should be little need for confrontation. Being positive with your roommate will lead to positive attitudes. Negative attitudes will only lead to negative living conditions and cause for unhappiness.